Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug, ignored a leaky faucet, pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look like that? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects, but there's an easier way. When you download Thumbtack, it's easier to care for your home from top to bottom. Pull out your phone and in just a few taps, you can search, chat, and book highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Plus, you'll know what to tackle next because Thumbtack is the app that shows you what to do, who to hire, and when. So say goodbye to all those unfinished home projects and say hello to caring for your home the easier way. Download Thumbtack and start a project today.
Ophthalmologist Dr. Strauss has seen firsthand how the metaverse is helping surgeons practice the procedures to treat cataracts.
Cataracts are the primary cause of avoidable blindness.
He works with a virtual reality training platform developed by Fundamental VR and Orbis International to help surgeons develop the muscle memory they need. The result? More confident, capable surgeons. And even more importantly,
Patients who can see.
explore more stories like Dr. Strauss's at meta.com/metaverseimpact.
We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Alex, I like this little end of season tradition we have. I feel like the college football season isn't truly over until I talk about it fairly briefly with you usually in a hotel room before I am on the way to an airport.
Yeah, this is the last split zone duo Sunday hurry up of the season, and you'll notice that it's not Sunday. Exactly. Just like when Monday Night Football isn't on Monday. Sometimes you got to keep things the way that they are. Richard, you were in attendance tonight. I had already left Houston after our live show on Saturday. You were there to watch Michigan win 34-13 against Washington to win the national championship for the first time since 1997. Maybe a bit of symmetry there that the last Michigan title was the final year before the BCS. This latest Michigan title is the final year before the playoff goes from 4 to 12. So you got to give them this. They get it in under the wire when a postseason format is about to change.
Yeah. I thought, Alex, that on balance, like this score reflects the first quarter of the game, but not the last 3 quarters of the game, if that makes sense. Like let's call a spade here, all right? This was not the most aesthetically pleasing football game for like 2.5 quarters, the second, third, and then sort of like halfway through the fourth quarter. There were, I think, 16 possessions, 8 apiece, in which basically nothing happened. There were like 6 or 7 punts. Washington had 4 possessions in which they could have tied the game and were unable to. Michigan won the game in the first quarter and the last 2 drives. Washington, in my estimation, spent the rest of the game not winning it. The opportunities were there to be had for them. The game was there to be won for them, and they were unable to do it. And I know people are going to talk about missed penalties and missed holdings. I thought Washington's defense adjusted in run defense, and Michigan stopped kind of running the ball in that second quarter. And that's when we started to say, maybe we got a game here. But yeah, the top line takeaways are the score is weirdly befitting of what happened, but not actually over the full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I think the best endorsement for this national championship winning Michigan defense is that, to me, this was never a game. And I understand that it was 7 points at halftime, and it was 7 points into, I believe, the fourth quarter, and certainly for a lot of the third.
Washington had 4 possessions in which they could have tied the game.
So it was a one-score game, in air quotes. But just like Penn State was never coming back when they were down just a touchdown against Michigan for a lot of that game, Washington was just never coming back in this game. And
you think that really?
There was maybe there was one play, and it was the Michael Penix Jr. interception on the first play of the second half. it just wasn't going to happen. This Michigan defense was special, special, special. And I think the best indicator of that is that even when games were nominally close, it so rarely felt that way this season. And it didn't tonight, not to me.
You know, Alex, I'm actually pretty surprised you think that. I thought that I'm not going to sit here and say that Michigan's defense did not play well. You don't hold that Washington offense to 13 points and not play well. Mike Sanderson, incredible, stood on his head.
Baller.
From in that game, when you see the way Sanderson gets them on the same page when Washington motions and shifts, he's running the checks. He's doing the communication. He and Will Johnson and Stab, number 3, tackled. The game's about blocking and tackling, and they tackled those guys on the back end all night. I think that it was, to me, obviously the gutting one is was it a fourth down? The Roma, you know what I'm talking about. The Roma Dunze wide open. It was actually kind of a coverage rush by Sanderson. But Dunze's wide ass open, and Michael Penix just missed the throw. That's obviously the one that you want back. You think about the wheel route with Nixon, the backup running back, that he just dropped it on third down. You think of the deep ball that they actually did hit to Roma Dunze. That was a nice pass that got brought back because of the holding. And you think about a couple of these plays. You think about the one that Penix missed in the red zone when they held them to 3 in the first quarter, I think it was, at least in the first half. And I actually was a little surprised Washington actually didn't go for it on that fourth down. But, for me, I don't want to take it away from Michigan's defense because, again, they did play well. I think they borrowed some of the stuff from Arizona State, especially when Washington got in obvious passing down situations. And they certainly played well. But I think what really strikes me is the missed opportunities for Washington when the game was in hand and winnable.
There were a lot of missed opportunities. You just enumerated many of them. But at the end of the day, it was 8 yards per play to 4. And you're right that the score was indicative of how lopsided the run of play was in this game. I think there were these signs throughout the night that this was just going to be Michigan's night. The first sign that this was going to be Michigan's night is that Donovan Edwards, who sees declining usage the last couple of weeks, did not have a productive season at all, had carried 4 times each, not very productively in their last 2 games to start the postseason, is the third running back into this game. Looks like it's probably a demotion. Gets a touch, 41 yards, house call. His next touch is a 46-yard house call. I had tweeted after he was not into the game before their number 2 running back Mullings. Looks like they figured out he's not the guy. Wondered when they would figure that out. And then 80 something yards and 2 carries for 2 touchdowns. Like, when your guy who you seem to have kind of put in the doghouse is doing that, like, it's going to be your night, man. And it just was their night.
I actually, in the locker room after the Rose Bowl, I was talking to Donovan Edwards about something, and like another reporter was kind of coming. I'd finished an exchange with him, and another reporter was coming in to talk to him, and he goes, "Yo, like, turn that recorder off," to the other reporter, as I was finishing up, and he was sort of like checking the reporter about, I guess this reporter had said in some medium that Donovan Edwards was not a bell cow, and Donovan Edwards had taken that some type of way and was not pleased about that. I remember that as I watched him go 41 yards, basically untouched, to the house. And in the press box, like, they make an announcement when something significant happens. So they go, that was, I think there was like the second or the longest touchdown run in college football playoff history, or something like that. And then he hits the other one.
I can think of one
and the
longer.
guy comes, the guy comes back on the thing and he goes, well, obviously that has replaced the earlier run as the longest run in college football playoff history. It was interesting. Washington, that first quarter, man, I was, and I'm not alone. I'm like, yo, this is going to be a long night for the folks out west. I mean, it's light in the ass. overloaded. Michigan's overloaded to one side and just ran it to where they weren't. And buddy, number 7 on Washington had a bad time all night long. That young man was in hell against the run and in the pass, and they made him look a little silly on some fits on the back end there.
Yeah, Dominique Hampton for Washington was trying very, very hard and struggling. I think he was the safety who finally, forgive me if not, but I think he was the Washington safety who crashed down. They finally got a stop at the line on a Corum run, and he just kind of injured himself. Michigan is not light in the ass, is the point that I'm making.
That might have been Jabbar Muhammad, but your point's well taken.
You're correct. That was Jabbar Muhammad. Yes, you're correct.
And then speaking of injuries, obviously Dylan Johnson's injury was significant. I mean, Dylan Johnson got hurt on the first play of the game, literally the first play of the game, sustained a high ankle sprain, and clearly was not his best self. He probably wasn't his best self coming into the game, but was clearly not his best self throughout this game. Washington could not, besides Michigan being supremely stout against the run, Washington could not run the ball in this game. Dylan Johnson had, I think, 11 carries for like 36 yards. It was not happening in the run game. And Penix threw the ball 50 times in this game. It's tough, man. It's just tough. And they just could not get anything going. Speaking of not getting anything going, Alex, we did not get the J.J. McCarthy game, and yet he has the rings, and the banner will fly forever.
Yeah. I mean this in a complimentary fashion to Michigan and not even a derogatory fashion to J.J. McCarthy. He just never had to lift heavy objects this entire season. It just did not occur. And that doesn't mean he didn't do a perfectly fine and good job with what he had on his plate, because he did. His main object was not to give the ball to the other team. He didn't in this game. Michigan built such a bullying outfit that they just did not have to convert in difficult passing spots ever all year. He did not have a 3rd or 4th down conversion with his arm in this game. He completed 2 3rd down passes. He missed the 4th down. One of the 3rd down balls was a screen on a 3rd and 10 to Roman Wilson. The other was a shallow crosser to Colson Level in the tight end on 3rd and 18. And it didn't matter. They scored 34 points. Again, it sounds like I'm saying something I'm not about J.J. McCarthy. What I am saying is that Michigan just defies what I think has become more the rule than the exception, which is that you need sort of a sparkling downfield passing game, at least as a supplement, at least as an angle to win this tournament. Even Georgia the last few years had that with Stetson Bennett and Brock Bowers and George Pickens, and Michigan didn't have it and didn't need it. And there's something really impressive about not needing it.
Yeah, I don't even know if he outplayed neither of these quarterbacks played well in this game. Michael Penix did not play well in this game at all. He just didn't.
No.
And I know and he got hurt. It clearly got hurt. The right, he's a lefty, right shoulder got hurt, got rolled up on the interception, I think, which was sort of on the first interception, where it actually looked like his arm got hit as well. And then by the end, he had re-aggravated the rib injury. So he was dealing with some stuff bodily as well. But he did not play well in this game. He just didn't. Missed throws that he hadn't missed really all season, not all season, but missed throws that you don't really see him miss, that he definitely did not miss in the Sugar Bowl. Those receivers, besides Rome Odunze, those receivers were quiet, man. They had a couple catches, but you did not hear much from Polker McMillan.
You didn't? Richard, I'm curious your impression from up top watching this game in the press box. It seems like it's going to be some resume tape for Jesse Minter, the Michigan defensive coordinator, and for everybody on that Michigan defense. I think you should give them their flowers because it was a spectacular season and they did hold Washington to 13 points. Whatever shortcomings Washington might have had in that game, I thought it was hugely impressive. And I wonder what you saw that they were doing.
Yeah, I think that, like I sort of said a little bit earlier, in the second half, they very clearly started borrowing from the Arizona State blueprint, right? Arizona State is the team that had held Michigan to its now held Washington to its now second lowest point total held them to 15 points. Granted, Washington did not have an offensive score in that game. They just had pick 6 and 3 field goals. And in that game, a lot of what Arizona State did was, and it was pretty aggressive, but they basically would walk 6 guys up to the line of scrimmage, and sometimes all 6 came, sometimes 4 came, sometimes 5 came, and they would drop guys out, and they did some stuff there to try to mess with Washington in protection. Penix handles the protection to try to mess with Washington in protection, and to just make Penix kind of take a beat, right? Think a beat, and hopefully that rush gets home and is able to affect him. One of the knocks on Penix, deservedly so, is that he does get happy feet sometimes against a rush. And I think the miss on the first drive when they go down there, and the miss in the end zone where they ended up kicking a field goal, I actually thought he missed because he was climbing the pocket and his base got narrow and he just missed the throw. And so in the second half, when they got into the real obvious passing situations, Michigan started doing that. Michigan started sort of borrowing from that Arizona State toolkit, and they were able to deploy some of those blitzes pretty well there, and they clearly started working in the second half.
Yeah, all flowers to the Michigan defense. It's a great college football defense. The difference between them and pick your elite unit of recent times, a 2011 Alabama, 2021 Georgia, is academic. I'm not saying it's as good as those units. I'm not saying that, but like it's an academic difference, right? Like they stopped everybody all year.
Here's the thing, Alex, and this is why this Washington team is not 2019 LSU. This Washington team has 3 NFL receivers. That's all well and good, but it is not 2019 LSU. It had been stopped. You've seen it stopped against Arizona State. You've seen it stopped tonight. You saw it at least slowed by Oregon State, slowed by Washington State. Not stopped, but slowed. Like this offense, as good as it was, had bad weeks, had down weeks, had mortal weeks. And tonight they had a bad night, and it's the reason why they're not national champions.
Let's talk about the narrative elements of this for Michigan, the things that are going to be all over the mainstream coverage of this game and probably should be. Number one, no, there is not an asterisk on this title for Michigan. I think it is demonstrated, much to the chagrin of the rest of the Big Ten, that when you beat the hell out of everybody, including after your mastermind Connor Stallions is sent to Siberia football-wise, you have demonstrated that you are a worthy national champion, and I don't think anyone, even the most hating Ohio State fan, can really say much about that. It is a paragraph on the Wikipedia page. Like, it is part of their story, and
sure,
you can think they're cheaters, and in fact, at least some of them are cheaters. They dropped their lawsuit against the Big Ten, and Jim Harbaugh served the suspension, and all of these things happened, but they won. So I think that's about that. Like, they cheated and they won and they did their time, and I'm cool moving on with that. And I don't think that anything here is asterisked or undeserved.
Yeah, man, die mad. They went 15-0.
That pretty much says the whole deal. Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. They are a great football team. They are built. We started this season talking about how 3 yards in a cloud of dust was coming back a little bit more in vogue. Obviously, what we now, by the way, we now have 3 straight 3 yards in a cloud of dust national champions, by the way.
Yes, we do. But I do think the difference is worth, I was sort of getting to this a minute ago. I think Michigan was even more 3 yards in a cloud of dusty than Georgia was. Like, Stetson was obviously not a first round NFL pick type quarterback, but like they tore people up in the passing game and on passing downs often during their last couple of playoff runs. And, you'll think back to beating Alabama in the national title game a couple of years ago, the deep ball that kind of put Georgia ahead late in that game. Michigan was of a unique vintage to me in terms of college football playoff era national champions for just how committed to that bit they were.
Yeah, but yeah, it's remember that despite the offensive, despite what offenses have done to the sport in the last 10 years, 15 years, it's a bit, but the game is about blocking and tackling when you get down to it. And this Michigan team banged, and just, I had a conversation with Nick Saban in August, and he was like, you're already starting to see 3 yards in a cloud of dust come back. And that's Michigan embodied it. And so I don't bring what I'm about to bring up. I don't bring up to go into like the NFL stuff, but like Jim Harbaugh is that dude as a coach. Like the guy wins fucking everywhere, man. And he's been 60 minutes away from a Super Bowl. He is now a national champion. Whether he gets back to the NFL, we will figure it out here over the coming days and weeks. But to cement this guy's legacy, this is now Michigan's best modern era coach. You would agree?
Yeah.
So this is your guy. He's the first guy who's given you an undisputed national championship since color television was invented.
Jim Harbaugh has made his Michigan tenure an unqualified success in every way imaginable. It was weird as hell, but assuming he leaves, and I bet he will, because someone's gonna bite. I mean, given what he just did, like, cool, man. It's a good way to go off into the sunset if that's the case. It's a good story, and I'm sure that it will be written by a lot of different Michigan authors in the coming years. They could have fired this guy in 2020. At the time, I thought that would have been totally reasonable. I remember during the pandemic season. Turned out good call not to do that, to take the pandemic year for the outlier that it was. You take that, though. You take the last couple years of NFL flirtations and him trying to go and not being able to. You take the first several years of Ohio State losses. It's kind of amazing, Richard, isn't it, that it ends in a place, if this is it, but even if it's not, where it's just such a clear success despite all that's happened?
Yeah. He's had the way that he fell off, like you're mentioning in 2020, the way he found a way to slay the Ohio State Dragon, the way that they have obviously fallen short of the playoff the last 2 years, and then, summited this year, has been very interesting to sort of watch this program restore itself to glory, or I guess sort of restore itself to the place in the sport that they want to tell you that they inhabit, that they actually really kind of haven't over the last 40 years, for the most part. I do, as someone who, boy, has had a lot of sleepless nights thanks to these Michigan Wolverines, it's been interesting to see them pay it off, right? To see them hit the summit. I think of the players on this team that will go down as Michigan legend. It goes beyond JJ McCarthy. I mean, you think about Blake Corum. Like, for God's sakes, Blake Corum, that's what this team is. Blake Corum, Mike Sanderstraw, Chris Jenkins, Michael Barrett, Zach Zinter, Trevor Keegan. Like, these guys who are going to go down as just legends of this program. You feel good for those kids, and whatever, what the Hunter Stallions, and then whatever. Like, you feel good for those kids who've put all into this program and who have been through it the last 3 years, right? They've had their setbacks where they, again, summited that Ohio State mountain and then fallen short, and are able to get over it this time around.
They're going to give Stallions a ring. They're going to throw him a party like Paulie from The Sopranos.
I hope so.
I think he's going to get his out of prison and didn't talk party at some point in the next couple of years.
I am waiting. It's very late. It's 3 a.m. Central Time right now. I have not yet seen the Stallions video from this game. I am certain he was there. I do not believe he was on the field after the game, but I'm certain he was in attendance. So
probably wise while the feds are still circling. Yeah.
When it surfaces, I will laugh very heartily at the Stallions of it all.
I want to talk quickly about Washington before we get out of here. Are you done on Michigan? Any further observations about the champs?
No. King stay king. They are the champs indeed.
So where Washington goes from here is very interesting to me. We've seen in just the last year what can happen when a team has a dream season, makes it to the national title game, doesn't go their way. everything that Washington did this year was incredible, but it does not necessarily mean anything for the future. TCU could tell you that based on what just happened in 2023. I think the good news is that Washington is going to the Big Ten. Washington is in one of the Power 2 leagues. Washington is an NIL presence, as Christian Cape was explaining to us just the other day on the Split Zone Duo Substack, splitzonduo.com. Washington has great infrastructure, great bones, great foundation, and the playoff is going to 12 teams. So it would not stun me if Washington was back at least in this tournament very, very soon. I don't think that this was their one shot forever and they'll never get another one. But it is painful because when you're not a blue blood and you're not one of the 5 or 7 schools or even the 2 or 3 schools with a pronounced recruiting advantage on everybody else, there's no guarantee you ever get a shot like this again. And
they are, by the way, what they're replacing is serious business, right? It ain't just immense. A couple fellas.
No, I mean it's like TCU last year. It is. I mean, it's all of almost all of your favorite Washington Huskies from this year, almost all, will not be on this team next year. And that is a lot to confront. I think one other good piece of news if you're Washington is that it appears, based on mountains of evidence at this point, that Kalen DeBoer can really coach. It's going to be another offseason of people trying to hire Ryan Grubb. I firmly believe that. I don't know if they'll keep him again. I know that his relationship with Kalen DeBoer is a big asset to that effect and that they paid him pretty well. So I don't think that we are going to see an outright long-term Washington collapse. It wouldn't shock me if they had another opportunity like this in the future, but nothing's guaranteed if you're a program in that station. So thinking about you tonight, Washington fans, tough way for a 10, but it was a hell of a season.
We will see what happens from here. Kalen DeBoer has a contract extension on his desk. Like Washington wants him to stay, and they want to pay him very handsomely to do that. Same with Ryan Grubb. But you know, we talk about NFL future for Jim Harbaugh. I do wonder if the NFL comes calling for one Mr. Grubb potentially. You know, that is something that the tea leaves can show. Let's just say that. This Washington team was highly entertaining, and fun to watch and fun to see them go on this run. You know, you fall short, but 132 teams fall short. That's just the way it goes. And I am interested in, all right, it's Big Ten time. You're going to play a lot of games like the one you just played coming up here pretty soon. And how they will rise to the task, we will certainly pay attention to and chronicle moving forward.
We will also talk more in the next couple of days and weeks about the rest of this season that just was. There's obviously a lot of unpacking to do. Congratulations to South Dakota State, which put forward a similarly dominant defensive performance, even more so really, to beat Montana in the FCS championship game on Sunday. Richard, it was an amazing season to podcast with you, to podcast with our dear co-host, Stephen Godfrey. It was wonderful to be together in Houston on Saturday night for Split Zone Duo Live. That was presented by our partners at Home Field Apparel. It really filled the cup for all of us. I think it was the biggest crowd we'd had yet. It was a wonderful night. Great to connect in person with so many of the people who support the show, who make it possible, and great to have Home Field there, our longest standing partners, just, you know, being kind of hand in glove with us as we had that opportunity to do that at Rockefellers in Houston. Was wonderful to be there with Noki and Tires as well. Was thinking about them while we were watching that title game. The Goodyear blimp was over the roofed stadium in Houston, providing tremendous content. And it made me think about something, which is that, you know, there's tire companies like Goodyear.
When you almost got in a wreck because you saw the blimp on the side of the road while I was on the phone with you?
That did happen a few weeks ago. It's pretty stunning to go on the freeway and just see the Goodyear blimp parked like it's just a car in a parking lot. But I was thinking that, you know what? There's companies like Goodyear, tire companies like that spend their resources on things like blimps and marketing. There's tire companies like Michelin that spend them on a man. And there's tire companies like Nokian Tires that put that money into R&D, making the most reliable, highest performing tires for all seasons, all weather they possibly can. And we were honored to have our friends from Nokian Tires with us in Houston as well on Saturday night. Richard, it was a fun year. I'm looking forward to the off season, not because I'm happy that the season's over. I'm not, but because there is lots to go over, and we're going to be a good place to be while we do it.
Indeed. I'm going to drink a couple Yuengling beers here. Have we talked to Godfrey? Is there proof of life? Is he going to be okay with this result?
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I know that Godfrey's kind of been proven right? That Michigan finally adopted a championship ethic. I think that's the line that we're going with for him in the next couple of days.
That's the party line.
Yeah, they took his advice. They took our advice and began spending money on talent, and now here we are, national champions. Congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines and a fan base that Godfrey has always had a smooth relationship with, as have we all.
Many happy returns for the future with Godfrey and the Michigan fan base.